Welcome to the Self-Publishing School podcast. This is the podcast to listen to if you're an aspiring writer or an author who wants to be more successful. On this show, you'll learn how to write and launch a book successfully, all from the top authors and people just like you who are doing it at the highest level. I'm your host, Chandler Bolt, the founder of Self-Publishing School, the author of the book called Published, and the CEO of selfpublishing.com. For free training on how to publish a book that sells 10,000 copies, go to selfpublishing.com/free training. Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is the legendary Scott Allan. Scott Allan is the #1 best-selling author of a ton of books, including Fail Big, Relaunch Your Life, and Empower Your Thoughts. He's got books in 6 languages and over 200,000 copies sold worldwide. He's an SPS student originally, so one of the first ever cohorts of Self-Publishing School. He joined as part of that class, went on to become a Self-Publishing School coach and one of the lead coaches at Self-Publishing School and a co-creator of our Sell More Books program. We were just talking about this beforehand. He's coached over 700 plus students in the last few years, as well as completed over 5,000 coaching calls with our students. So just a wealth of knowledge, and he is going to bring all those conversations and to this conversation, right? And to this interview. And so think when you hear the things that he's saying, know that this is time tested. This works. He's talked to so many of you, obviously, if you're a student, and maybe we'll talk to you if you become a student. But today we're going to be talking about selling more books, growing a full-time career as a nonfiction author. And so really those two things, he's a wealth of knowledge on that and has done a lot of amazing things there. So Scott, great to have you.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to finally make this happen. So first off, let's start with why books? Why did you write your first one? And why is this something that you're so passionate about really building a full-time career as a nonfiction author?
Yeah, writing is something that I've always had a passion for. And even when I was in junior high school, I remember sitting down with I think it was an old typewriter maybe that I picked up somewhere, and just hammering out this book I'd written over the summer. It was a sci-fi book, and I just knew I'd always wanted to write. Eventually I had stopped doing that, took a bit of a hiatus for about 20 years. But it was always at the back of my mind that I've got to write that book. I've got to write that book. And I just never let the idea go. It just continued to fester there and grow there. So one day I just got so tired of telling myself, I've got to write this book. I think maybe it was like 12 or 13 years ago, I just sat down and started doing it. I literally just had no outline, no mind map. I sat down and started writing this book just by free flow. And it started as fiction, and because I have a strong passion for nonfiction, personal development, I was kind of torn between which path should I take, and eventually just decided to go with the nonfiction. And within 3 to 4 years, I think I had a book that was roughly maybe 100,000 words. So it was a big book, and at this point I was like, yeah, I'm going to publish this. And this was a little bit before self-publishing had come around, But I just had this determination to get it done, after that, I just had someone edit it, got a cover made, and eventually published it, split it up into 3 parts. And I had, I think, 3 books that I published.
Smart. Splitting up the big book into multiple books. Had you published before you joined Self-Publishing School?
Yeah. So I had 3, maybe 4 books that I had published already.
Okay. And so for that, and because I know we get asked this question all the time, what was the thought? How did you find Self-Publishing School, and what was the thought process behind joining after already publishing 3 books yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'd already published a few books, as I mentioned, but it was, I knew that I was missing something. I wasn't able to market them or sell them. Honestly, I probably didn't know what I was doing. I was just like putting covers together. I had someone doing that and putting them out there, but I had no real plan. And at the time, there were not any other self-publishing, courses or platforms around. So people were literally just writing stuff and putting it up there. But I came across Self-Publishing School through someone's email list that I was on. And at the time, it really clicked with me because I think the tagline was, write your book in 90 days. It's like 90 days. Well, it took me 4 years to write my first book. So, and at this time, I was actually pretty desperate because I really wanted to make it. And I think the price at the time was, it was a little bit higher than what I could afford, but I was like, I'm going to do this thing, So um, I just sold a bunch of stuff on eBay, got the money together, paid for the course. And to me, it was really like the last thing that I could afford. It's like, it's either this or nothing. So I did it. And I think the biggest thing that the biggest takeaway with that is that right away, it put me in touch with a community of authors that I'd never had before. Before that, I was like, floating by myself in the middle of the ocean, kind of just paddling and not really going anywhere. Suddenly I was in touch with these other people who were writing books too. And that was really powerful. That built momentum, built confidence, got set up with an accountability partner. And I did write a book in 90 days. It did not take me 4 years, which proves that it can be done. And yeah, that was just the greatest thing, is just being
That's
able
amazing.
to, yeah.
That's awesome, Scott. So you touched on this. We get asked this question all the time. You're torn between nonfiction and fiction. How did you decide on nonfiction, and what's your recommendation when students come to you asking, say, hey, should I go fiction first? Should I go nonfiction first?
Yeah, I still have a passion for fiction. I still write it. I haven't published anything yet, and I will in the future. But the nonfiction, I felt like I had started building this train that was gaining momentum, and I had to continue to go with it. And the more writing I did, the more ideas I would get. It's like, oh, I need to do that too. I need to do that too. So eventually, I just said, well, I sat down and I mapped out a plan for like the next, I don't know, like 5 to 10 books. It was just, and I was connecting them together and how they were going to flow and this and that. So that was a really good exercise to do, is to map everything out. And once I did that, it's like, it looks like I'm in this for the long term. I was looking at like a 5-year plan in order to make this happen. So the fiction wasn't something that I was, trying to pursue both of those paths. I think would have become very distracting, and it would have been too much for me to handle by myself. So
Yeah. I mean, your path is not dissimilar to a lot of people. Is if they want to write fiction, a lot of times we recommend write nonfiction first, and then you're going to learn the process, and then writing fiction is harder. So then write fiction afterwards. And so obviously you're very committed to a long-term nonfiction journey. And for some people, that'll be a one nonfiction book and then segue, but build the skill set, get a quicker win, and then roll into other genres if you choose to. So I want to get into a lot of, obviously, all things Sell More Books. You've been a big part of creating the Sell More Books program, and you've coached a lot of our Sell More Books students. So the starting point that I think a lot of people are wondering, maybe listening to this, is, hey, I've written and published my first nonfiction book. Why is it not selling? And how do I sell more books? I know this is a general question. And when you have a clarity call, a coaching call with folks, that's like kind of the starting point, and that's a diagnostic. But I guess, can you give a general answer to that question?
Yeah, it generally can be traced back to the launch itself, like not having a very good launch. In other words, not selling books. But going back even further, it leads right back to the creation of that book itself, like the cover design, the branding, all these things that, and I'll admit myself, when I first started out, did not consider any of these things really. I just put it together and put it out there. So a lot of people are still doing that. They are getting their books out there, but they're not optimized for the Amazon platform. They're not optimized for success. So when the book's not selling, it's a combination of, you're not selling enough books in your launch. You didn't have a launch really with the launch team. In most cases, people don't even have reviews or anything like that. And when you don't sell books in the first, say, 30 days, anything you do after that is still going to be, it's just, it's going to drag the book down. You really have to have that first 2 to 4 weeks is critical, especially the first couple of weeks. So, yeah. And just one other thing, they didn't touch on, they didn't do things like creating ads or, branding the book in a specific way so that their second and third book, and some people had a few books already, but they were just very disjointed. So we have to go through and, I'll do an analysis of the books. And if they're a series, they have to be tied together a certain way, so that, they can be branded as a series as well, so that you have a
Yeah.
really effective backlist.
Yeah. And I want to circle back to the fundamentals of a bestseller here in just a bit and have you speak to that a little bit. Hey, Chandler Bolt here. I hope you're loving this episode so far. It's time to go from inspiration to implementation. All right, so if you've learned something, we want to help you implement what you've learned with your book. So what I want you to do right now is go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a publishing consultation with one of the experts on my team. We'll talk about your goals for your book, your dreams, your challenges, your next steps, and we'll start putting together a plan. All right, so go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a call with the team. Let's see how we can help with your book. It's time to implement. So, a lot of times I'll when I'm doing some Sell More Books training, I call it failed launch Fred and successful launch Sally. So there's kind of these two groups, right? Failed launch Fred probably just said, hey, if I build it, they will come, and didn't really market it, probably didn't go through self-publishing school, didn't have a plan, all that stuff. And then it just didn't sell, right? And then there's successful launch Sally, which had a plan, intentionally marketed the book, had a successful launch, and then sales fell off a cliff. And now they're both in the same place asking this question of how do I sell books long-term, which is going to be a lot of what we'll talk about even more in the rest of this interview. But I want to start at kind of a middle point there, which is one thing we help a lot of students with is relaunching. And so especially, sometimes a successful launch Sally, they could still do a relaunch, and that would be the most helpful first step joining the Sell More Books program. And then a lot of times it's a failed launch Fred. So can you speak to that of how do I know when I should relaunch, if I should relaunch my book?
Yeah. So generally, I think a book should be relaunched if, again, if you had I would define a failed launch as a launch that didn't have any books sold, of course. And the other thing would be so if you don't sell any books, let's say you sell 50 books, which still is not a lot of books. After 30 days, the Amazon's algorithm, which we're always working against, is looking at the results of that after 30 days and saying, okay, well, the book didn't really sell very well, so we're going to push it over here and just focus on the books that are selling. And that's what Amazon is doing. Is it's a selling machine. They're in, they want to make money. They want to sell. They're going to push the products that are selling. And if your book doesn't fall within, if your book's not in that funnel, it's just going to get pushed aside and pushed down under. And at that point, let's say 3-6 months goes by, your book's ranking at 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. You can throw all the money you want at ads or change the cover and all that. It's not going to have any effect. Even if you drop the price to $1 and just market it for like 5 to 7 days, it's not going to do anything. So a relaunch effectively starts things from ground zero again, gives you that chance to have a really good launch, but you have to be prepared for it. You have to have I think the launch team is important, but it's just important for, people supporting the launch. If they're the, if the people on your launch team are the same people that are usually going to buy your book, that's a really good situation. It's not always that case. So really, we're just looking to get some reviews, and having a lot of reviews doesn't equal having a bestseller always, or even having a great launch. You just need enough to get you out of the gate. But I always advise people to focus on book sales. It doesn't matter if it's 99 cents or if it's $5. You just need those rankings to get up there, so that Amazon looks at that and goes, okay, well, this book's selling. Let's keep pushing it up there. And then a couple of weeks later, 10, 14 days later, when it's at a really good point, you raise the price, and then you make the money on the slide down. But you got to keep it going with building in ads, and and the ads that's a long-term game as well. So there's a combination of BookBub ads, Amazon ads, and knowing who's in your market, I keep an eye on all the other books in my genre. And this is an important point that I always hone in on people, to make sure you do your market research and always keep an eye on the books that are in your field, in your market, to see how they're doing or what they're doing. And I'll go into this author's platform and I'll pick everything apart. Like, okay, they're ranking at this. What are they probably doing? Oh, they're in these categories. We can use Katie Spy or Publisher Rocket to do this. We've got the tools so we can keep an eye on everything. And it's really important to always be watching the market in these other books, because they
Yeah.
will tell you a lot, and they'll give you, even if you're not able to connect with the author directly, they're not going to give you all their secrets, but you can still learn a lot by watching the way that they do things. So
No doubt. Hey, let's take I love some of what you said there, because I think there's fundamentals and there's blocking and tackling. There's the advanced stuff, which you kind of sprinkle a little bit of both in that. And so backing up, I think people know if you had a bad launch, and like you said, oops, if you haven't sold copies and you don't have reviews, then you probably need to relaunch. And that could be the first and kind of the starting point. I know we work with a lot of people where their cover is not good, and so then they'll get a new cover. They'll do a lot of other things to make sure that, all right, I'm going to relaunch with intentionality. And so obviously, if you haven't been through self-publishing school, you haven't done the launch team concept, you haven't had an intentional launch, like all those things, this is probably going to be, especially if we work together in the Somewhere Books program, that'll be the starting point. And so along with that, there's kind of our fundamentals of a bestseller. And I want you to go as basic as possible with this, Scott, and just like really dropping down X's and O's. So what are the fundamentals as you see them? Why are they important, and why is this kind of also an important starting point for folks when they're kind of starting the journey to sell more books long term?
Sure. Yeah. One of the first thing I would say to that is that knowing your gender and knowing that if the book is actually going to sell or not, because you can be really passionate. Yeah, you can really be really passionate about this topic, and spend time writing the book and you put it out there, but it turns out that those kinds of books actually are not selling, or maybe they were selling 5 years ago, they're not selling now. So we can do this research with tools that we have. That's the first thing I do. And the second thing would be, once you've decided, like, yeah, okay, there's a market for this, I'm going to be looking at the book covers of those other books. I research get a really good book design. Doesn't have to be, a piece of art, but it has to look really good on Amazon, of course, but it also has to look good in your genre. Obviously, if I'm writing sci-fi, military sci-fi, it has to look a certain way. And I see this a lot with people where the sci-fi military books, just using it as an example, are selling really well, probably because they have, their ecosystems built in. They've got a series and they all line up. And I see other authors will launch their book that just don't look like that at all. And the audience knows that, they're not going to buy your book because it just doesn't seem like it's fitting into their interests. So the other thing would be the keyword research. Going deep into the keyword research, embedding those SEO keywords into your book description, possibly into your title, into your subtitle and title, your subtitle and title, if you can. That works better with nonfiction than fiction, just because books that have really strong keywords built into the subtitle will rank 30% higher than books that don't. And then you've got your book description, and then obviously your KDP keywords. So doing the research into that, and then you've got the categories. So
yeah, love that. So keep, we always say Google is a search engine of browsers, Amazon is a search engine of buyers. And so SEO, search engine optimization, while everyone's focused on Google, that's the amazing thing about having books, is people are doing that same thing. And so think, what are my target readers searching, and how do I make sure I'm picking keywords and so that my book comes up when they search those keywords? That, like you said, it's in my subtitle, if possible, it's in the book description, and all those things, because Amazon's a search engine. And then we'll circle back to ad stuff later, but it's the same exact thing, just a different mechanism to apply that with keywords and things like that. And then categories, and picking the correct categories that increase discoverability of your book. Then there's also, how do you unlock 8 additional categories? We kind of have like a little process that we walk people through. It's one of the most popular blog posts of all time, I think, that you've written. And a core part of the program is your cover good? Does it grab attention? Is the title easy to read? Are you writing for a genre that's selling? All those things. Is it a well-written, timeless book? Right? And does it solve a pain that people have that they know that they have? And then I talk about this a lot on the Sell More Books kind of webinar trainings, is once you've followed all those fundamentals, then there's a couple paths, and I want you to expand on this a little bit. There's publishing in all three formats, which I think is one of the best next steps, because it's, you've seen this, Scott. So many authors, they miss out on book sales because they only have one or maybe two formats. So you're just going to sell more books. Yes, it's more of an upfront investment, but you're going to sell more books and you're going to make more royalties by publishing ebook, print, and audio. And I know a lot of people right now are making a significant amount of their royalties on audio. And so that's, and going audio first with their promotion. So it's, all right, fundamentals of a bestseller, publish in all three formats, and then kind of the road to 100 reviews is what we talk about in the Sell More Books program, and getting more reviews. And so there's a lot of places that we could take this, but there's also we have this three-legged stool concept that we talk about in the Sell More Books program. What's the three-legged stool, and how do you see that working for authors to help sell more books?
Yeah, so the three-legged stool is, first of all, your email list, which takes time to develop. And then you've got your social media platform, and then you've got your ads. And building all three of those into your, we call the author ecosystem, is really critical, because that's, first of all three of those are driving traffic to your books. The email list is something that, you're going to start building once you launch your book, and you've probably got a lead magnet. And if you plan on doing more books, or you're launching another product, that's going to be a critical piece of launching your, like launching your next thing, right? The social media as well. That's I find, like with a lot of authors, that's a big sticking point, because they haven't spent a lot of time there, and maybe they're putting up a post here and there. So just really what I do is, like, I'll watch other people who are being successful at that, and then try to model what they're doing. And it's just really, there's a lot of testing involved here too. So it's not like there's a perfect science to it, but there is something that's working that other people are implementing, right? And the ads as well. That's another kind of a big dinosaur. The one thing that I notice a lot of people will do when they launch their book, they'll set up a few ads, and then the ads are not working. They're like, oh, what did I do wrong? But that's a game of patience. Actually, I think all three of these things are. So you do have to be patient, but you also have to be persistent with it and continue to learn the process. Like with email list building, for example, your lead magnet is a critical piece of getting people onto your email list. But is your lead magnet optimized? Is your lead magnet in line with your content? Is this what you want to offer your audience, or is it just something free to download, which almost never works? So there's a lot of thinking that goes into this, and I get it when we're so involved in the creative process. We just want to get our book out there, and then we think about maybe doing these other things, and kind of get caught up in the rush of just getting it done. But I do step back, and myself too, I've had to step back and literally just restructure my whole platform. I think that's what I started doing from last year, because I realized that there were pieces missing in the puzzle. The machine was kind of breaking down. I had to look at what was going on there. So you have to be very systematic in your approach. And also, just the last thing, get feedback from people too, which with the Sell More Books program, I think that's one of the killer benefits of the program, is that people come in kind of feeling vulnerable, like, what are people going to say about my book? But it's become such a cohesive environment, because people are coming in getting direct feedback and honest feedback from their peers and from other people that they've never gotten before, where they were like, most people just sitting down in the dark, writing their book, putting it out there,
Yeah.
And now they're with a group of people that are saying, well, I think if you did this, and this, it would work a lot better. And they'll go away for a few weeks, come back, and they're like, oh, you're right, it did. And they're getting these small wins, and they're adding up. So yeah. So like with
That's
selling
huge.
books, it's like, yeah, and that all contributes to selling more books eventually, because now you're figuring out the things that you didn't do before, and now you have a chance to correct it. You can correct the course, go in a different direction, and it's okay to be vulnerable as well, and just take that feedback and run
Yeah.
with it. So yeah.
Hey, how do you spoke to this a little bit that you took a step back and said, all right, let me re-examine my catalog of books. Let me
Mm,
retool the marketing, all those things. How do you
mm,
coach students through? I think so many authors, especially if you don't like marketing, there's this tendency to, as soon as I publish one book, I start writing the next book instead of spending 6 months, a year, or years marketing that book,
mm,
which,
mm.
and for so many people, that's the big mistake that I see that they make is not committing to a 1 year. Or I had John Rowland on the podcast recently. He called it the 5-year launch of
Mm.
continuously talking about the giftology book, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you coach students through that of, all right, the line between, okay, if I'm trying to build a full-time career out of this, I need a catalog of books, but
Yeah.
also you're not going to get there by just writing, then writing the next, then writing the next. Like, you have to spend time marketing the book. How do you coach students through that?
That's a tough one. And that's a great question, because I fell into the same trap actually, where I'm putting out, I started putting out, I guess, a lot of books, but I wasn't really focused on the marketing side of it, which doesn't make sense. But it's like, oh, I just had another book idea. I wrote it, threw it out there. And later I realized like the books just kind of stopped selling. And it's because I wasn't spending enough time in the marketing. Just too many pokers in the fire. So when students come in, they're like, "Yeah, I have all these book ideas, and I want to write them all." It's like, well, what's your number one? What's your passion? What's like the number one book like you could spend the next 1 to 3 years working on, even after it's out there, and then marketing it. And the marketing, this is the thing with marketing books, is that when we say marketing, it's just such a wide net, but really to me, it's just three things. It's building your email list, working with ads. And the third thing is actually consistently launching. It doesn't always have to be launching a new book, but you have to have, for that book to really do something, you should have something on the
Consistent
back end.
promotions. Yeah.
Yeah, promotions. Maybe people have got courses, coaching, whatever it is. That's the real the gold of their platform. If they have something else that they can offer, and then the book can sustain itself, because maybe the book will become a lead generator for their business. I've seen
Yeah.
people who just will give it away for free. They weren't making money
Mm-hmm.
from the book, but they were doing great on the back end with the rest of
Huge.
their
Yeah.
business. Yeah.
Stephen Covey would say, begin with the end in mind, right? Is your goal
Hmm.
to grow your business? Okay, begin with that in mind and optimize towards that. Is it to sell books? Okay, begin with
Yeah.
that in mind and optimize towards that, right? So we're going to kind of move into kind of a little bit of a lightning round, and I've got a ton of just final quick questions for you.
Sure.
Scott, you sold over 200,000 copies of your book, or sorry, books. What has worked the best? What are maybe the top 1 to 3 things that you feel like have really moved the needle in sold books?
Yeah, it was the persistence with the ads was one thing. The other thing was just I was always tweaking the books, and sometimes this can be a really good thing to do, and other times you can get into a habit of just like, oh, I've got to change this, I've got to change this. So, just changing a lot of those little things that don't make a difference. I would change
Right.
covers and things like that, but if you're going to change anything, it's like keep an eye on your keywords, categories, and your book cover. I probably changed some of mine. I changed like a few times because I was working on the branding, and as I got more clear on the branding, I started changing these things. But I kept very consistent with keeping the ads going and promoting the book to my list. So building my list, running regular promotions for the books, like dropping them to 99 cents for like 5 days, once every 3 months, for example, gives it a really good boost. Um, and and actually launching more books is a really good strategy, but it's important to, like, it's 80-20. You might have 100 books out there, and you're going to have like 4 or 5 that are going to be your money makers, your game changers. probably not all the books are going to sell. Eventually, they are going to start dropping. So you got to know which books are your winners. Go all in on those
Mm,
books, right? And sometimes,
mm.
and this is again, I think, learning from my own mistakes and failures. That's what I didn't do. Is like I did it for a couple of my books, but then I stepped back from it and got, started putting out all these other books, and I stepped away from the pillar books, and the pillar books were screaming for attention, going, "Hey, what about us?" And by the time I went back, they're just kind of like struggling along. So, yeah, just knowing like what you're, if you have one book, you have one book, and that's great. You're just going to go all in on that. I've got a few authors who have done that. They've done such a great job of it, but they were focusing on the book sales, but they have this other, they were building a course as well, and they were doing things one by one, like focusing on one thing, getting it done, going to the next, right? And
Yeah.
I was like, this is great because, sometimes I myself and other authors just had so many ideas, and I was going to do all these things, and I was signing up for everything, and that just, ended up in confusion. So,
Yeah.
so it's something to be said for that. Just getting one, get it done, do one thing, get it done, go to the next thing.
Less but better.
Mhm.
And kind of the concept that we talk about of half-built bridges of they're sort of trying everything and you end up with nothing fully finished, and so instead focusing
Totally.
on building one bridge at a time. Scott, this is awesome. I'm kind of lightning round final few questions. You alluded to this a little bit with your last answer, but I'd love to just see if anything else comes to mind. What are some of the commonalities that you've seen with people who have success in the Sell More Books program?
Mm.
Either things that you see of that kind of separates the people who are having success from the people who aren't. What are the commonalities of the successful group?
Yeah, they're the first thing is they're consistent with their actions. So they're taking action every day. It might only be something they're doing 10 minutes a day, an hour a day, but that's working. So there's consistency and persistence. Like they're continuing to work on their platform every day, but also they're willing to learn as well. And like that, having that willingness to learn, like they're always trying new things, and if it doesn't work, they'll try something else. They're asking for feedback. So the three things would be, having a consistent habit of working on your book, on your platform, realizing that it is a long-term game. And that's something that I notice a lot of people are, we want the quick wins, and we need those too. We need some of our quick wins to get some of those bigger ones later, but you have to commit to a certain amount of time. I think it should be every day, even if you're just putting in, 10 minutes. It's just the habit of showing up, right? Showing up, doing something, even if it's just talking to your accountability partner, or setting up a few ads, whatever it is, but you're working on something. And like those three things, when people are consistently moving forward with that persistence, eventually they're going to, they may have some valleys sometimes where they feel like nothing's happening. I hear this a lot. Nothing's working. I can't, it's just not happening for me. Should I give up? And I'm like, well, it's like that quote, like a lot of people who before they succeeded, they, maybe they gave up like just before the finish line, and so you don't want to be that person. You just want to just keep going a bit more. So, and they did, and then they had another rise, and that was when, that was when they were struggling. That's when you should be digging in for the fight. So
3 feet from gold,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
It's a great example of that. So, on the flip side, what about common mistakes? Top one or two mistakes that you see students making that hurt their book sales, or even just commonalities with people who don't get as much results going through the process?
Yeah, a lot of it relates back to not having a general understanding of the market and the like we'll just use Amazon as, because they are probably the number one driver for books, but not having an understanding of how the algorithm works. And we don't have, I'm not an algorithmic engineer or anything like that, but just knowing some of the basics is really going to help you with, your book launches and also sustaining sales. So, and people don't know what they don't know, which is why they join the program, and they work together with myself and the other coaches, is that we can teach them these basics so that when they relaunch, it's like, well, you should do it this way, because when you did it before, you did all these things, which actually wasn't, that wasn't the right way to do it. Do
Didn't
it this
work.
way. Yeah, it didn't
Yeah.
work. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a lot of the times is, and just one last thing is that they'll put the book out there and then just maybe do a few ads or whatever. And then like, oh, I didn't get any book sales. What's wrong? It's like, well, you actually, you need to do a lot more than that. It's you need to have, and I'm just using ads as I don't think that ads is not, that it's not a game changer, but it's
Yeah.
certainly, you're certainly building a foundation there. And I know working with Amazon, as we all do, how frustrating it can be when you just spent the last day and a half creating 20 ads and 3 weeks later nothing's happening. But anyway, that's
Yeah.
here or there. But so anyway, yeah, just to get to your question, um, they just have to come in with I think the mindset is critical. So that was just the last thing I was going to
Mm,
say, is like having that
mm.
mindset that um, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get my book to the level where I want it to be. And that just means, be willing to learn, willing to change, which can be hard for, I've seen a lot of people where maybe they were willing to change, but they didn't realize what they had to change to get
Yeah.
there. And that's kind of where we can, I can help them with their mindset to get that
Yeah.
moving in the right direction. So,
Long-term mindset, follow the fundamentals before trying to jump to the advanced stuff. So many people want to
mm,
jump to the advanced stuff and you're pouring water in a leaky bucket.
yeah.
You haven't followed the fundamentals first. And then, exactly to your point, Scott, my old boss used to say, listen and do it.
Hmm.
Like, you got a process. I'm going to teach you the process, listen and do it. And if you
Yeah.
do that, you will be successful. And it's
Yeah.
not a matter of if, but when. And so having that mindset of, okay, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm not looking for a quick fix overnight success formula, because that doesn't exist. This is going to help expedite the process, the process, but I'm committed to the process. Right.
Mm,
So that's so good, Scott. Final one or two things. We're right at time here. So say I'm listening to this or watching this, and let's say I just joined self-publishing school and specifically just joined the Sell More Books program, and I'm about to
mm.
hop on my first clarity call with you or with one of our Sell More Books coaches. What's your advice to that person? How can they jumpstart and get going and really prepare to get the most out of their first call with you?
Yeah, I think it's the come in with an empty mind so that we can start with start from the beginning and just work with that. By an empty mind, I mean, it's like if you come in with the cup is already full and you think I've got my book out there and I just want to build on that and not change anything. I always break things down so that we can go right back to where you first had the idea for creating this. Why did you do it? And sometimes going through that process, some people realize like, oh, actually, I wasn't as committed to this as I thought. I'm going to start something new. Like, what do you think about this? And we'll start to work. Like in a lot of cases, we worked on a new idea for a better book that was in a stronger gender that did well, did much better long term. So, yeah, when they
That's
come,
great.
when they come through, yeah, we work on their strategy, like their long-term goal. 5 years can be pretty daunting, so we'll just start with like the next 90 days and work up to 1 year. But just to get things clear from the beginning, like what do you want to achieve, and we'll just hone in on that goal and build their book, build their content around that. So yeah, it's pretty exciting, because people they come in and a lot of them are really like they're not confident, they're unsure if this is the thing for them. But after we've taken a look at their platform, what their dream really is, and sometimes they don't always want to step forward and tell me that. But once we really get into the nitty gritty of what they're really longing for, yeah, it's just like they're just on fire. They just want to go away and create their thing and get it out there. So.
That's awesome, man. That's so exciting. Scott, you're changing so many people's lives through the work that you're doing, coaching, through your books, through helping people publish books, through helping people sell books, like just igniting. I mean, it's leveraged impact, right? It's what we talk about
Mm.
all the time. So thanks for this. This was amazing. Where can people go to find out more about you and to purchase your books?
Sure, yeah. They can go to Amazon, just plug in Scott Allan author or Scott Allan, and you'll find me on the Amazon stores there as well. I've got a website that's in the works that'll be coming out in a couple of months. So we'll just be probably hosting some, my books on there as well. And but yeah, in the meantime, they can go to Amazon, and if you find my books on there, you can, more than happy for you to, leave a review, or just share it with your friends and family.
That's awesome. Scott, thank you so much, guys. If you're interested in working with us at Self-Publishing School, so going on the journey just like Scott did, years ago, or specifically joining our Sell More Books program to help you sell more books. And who knows, you might even get the chance to work with Scott or one of our other Sell More Books coaches. Go to self-publishingschool.com/apply, book a call with the team. There, we'll talk about your goals for your book, your challenges with your book, your next steps. We're going to start putting together a plan to either get the book done and published or to sell more books. And then ultimately, from there, if you enroll in Self-Publishing School, you can get on a clarity call with Scott or one of our Sell More Books coaches and start moving forward through the process. So if that's something that you're interested in, don't wait. Go to self-publishingschool.com/apply. Go ahead and book a call with the team, and let's help you get going on your journey. Scott, thank you so much, man. This was awesome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Self-Publishing School podcast. I know there's so many places that you can be spending your time. There's other podcasts that you could be listening to, YouTube channels that you could be watching. So thank you so much. It means the world. Now, I want you to do 3 things right now if you found this episode helpful. All right, number 1, I don't know if you know this, but we've got a YouTube channel. It's a companion channel to this podcast. All the video versions of the episode are on the YouTube channel. So number 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Number 2, if you're listening to this podcast wherever, whether this is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, number 2, I want you to subscribe to this podcast right now so you don't miss a future episode. And then number 3, this is probably the most important, leave a review on the podcast. All right, reviews are super important and help this podcast get discovered by other people. So number 3, leave a review on the podcast. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next episode. If you're on the fence about scheduling a publishing consultation call with my team, maybe you're not quite ready for that, I've got some free training that I think will be really helpful for you. All right, all you have to do is go to register to sign up. Go to selfpublishing.com/free training. When you do, you're also going to get a free digital copy of my new book, Published. And on that training, you're going to learn the next steps, so how to implement with your book. So how to write, how to publish, how to launch successfully. So go to register right now at selfpublishing.com/free training. I'll see you there.